In 1994, Rwanda descended into one of the darkest chapters in modern history, the Rwandan genocide of the 1994.
Genocide is real, it's not a joke. That the international community failed 32 years ago. It cannot afford to fail again.
In just 100 days, more than 1 million lives were brutally taken, not by strangers, but by neighbors, friends, and fellow citizens.
So what happened in Rwanda can happen anywhere. Who killed your family?
Fueled by years of division, hate-filled propaganda, and political manipulation, the violence left a nation shattered, families torn apart, community erased, and deep scar etched into conscience of humanity. Decades later, the echoes of that tragedy still resonate far beyond Rwanda's border, serving as a stark warning of how quickly words can turn into weapons and differences into destruction. It is a story not only of loss, but of lessons about vigilance, unity, and the responsibility every society carries to prevent hatred from taking root again. Following this, Dost Media spoke with the Rwanda's ambassador to Tanzania, General Patrick Nyamvumba, to reflect on this lesson in today's digital age.
It's a great honor to have you today, Mr. Ambassador General Nyamvumba, and we want to dig deep into this Rwanda genocide.
Yes.
The lesson we African countries we must learn from the 1994 Rwanda genocide. 100 days of bitterness, 100 days where heart feels torn apart, and families that displacement. So. Basically, based on your experience as a military officer back then in the Rwanda Patriotic Front, what are the greater lessons that you think most of the countries in Tanzania must learn from the Rwanda genocide?
First, thank you very much. As you must have seen in the clips that were played here today, our country in 1994 went through one of the worst human tragedies. So what happened in 1994 was a planned, orchestrated, and well-executed genocide against the Tutsis. It was 100 days of mayhem, 100 days of where over 1 million souls lost their lives. Rwanda as a country has a long history. We've existed as a nation state since as a nation state around 1090 AD. And from then we've existed as one nation, one people with one language, one religion, until so many years later when we had colonialism. At the turn of at the end of the 19th century, when the first colonists came to Rwanda. In the 20th century, at the beginning of the 20th century, when Rwanda was mandated to the UN, the first colonial settlers in Rwanda were Germans, and Rwanda was part of German East Africa, which also included Tanzania. So when the Germans were defeated in the First World War, then Rwanda was mandated to Belgium. So therefore, the Belgian colonial system introduced divisions within what was already a socially neat fabric of society. And it was understandable, it was done for purposes of dividing us so that they're able to rule over us, as like most colonial forces did in the rest of Africa. The difference between us and others, what it got so entrenched, that in 1932, Belgians started issuing ethnic-based identity cards. They had succeeded in ethnicizing what were before social classes. They made them into ethnic groups. And so what you hear of today as Tutsis, Hutus, Twas, Yes, they existed before, but as social classes, not as ethnicities. Scientifically, people who speak the same language, have the same culture, cannot be different tribes. So therefore, in Rwanda, we are one people. And so that division was continued now by the subsequent post-colonial governments. And for them to survive, and one would say they fell short of political maturity and wisdom. They not only built on what the colonial enterprise had done, but entrenched it further. This is what led to the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. And therefore, the lessons out of this, number one is, as people, we have more in common than what divides us. So the focus should not have been on an artificial division between a people, but actually what brought us together as a people, even before colonialism, up to now we speak one language. We had one, before the advent of colonialism, we had one religion. So and there were movements between social classes. So we had existed without a problem for over 800 years, even during the wars of conquest. I keep telling people that Rwanda is one of the countries that never had slave trade. It's not because Rwandans were not fit to be traded as human beings, but it's because even the leadership at the time in Rwanda realized that human beings have value, so much so that you can't trade them for anything. And therefore the kings at the time made trade in human beings a no-go area. Surprisingly, many more years later, political leaders who came after them instead decided to kill their own people in the name of ethnicity. So what happened in Rwanda can happen anywhere if it's not properly politically managed. What is going on currently in Eastern DRC is an example in point. Once you start identifying people by their ethnicity, discriminating them, there's so many stages that criminalizing them, there's so many stages that genocide goes through. That is how it starts. That is how it's perpetrated. And therefore, as an international community, we have a responsibility to ensure that never again is not only in words, but in action.
So, regarding to what you said, what are the early warning signs that community should recognize before the hatred escalates into the large-scale tragedy has happened?
Yeah, I'm saying we have currently an example of what is going on in the Eastern DRC. Once you start identifying people based on their ethnicity, then you also, that is one. Then you follow that through by criminalizing them. Then you follow through by dehumanizing them. You know, when people, what happened in Rwanda, the mere fact that you call a human being a snake or a cockroach, so that is a sign, because normally in most African contexts, a snake is an animal that is supposed to be killed. A cockroach is something that even has a spray in form of an insecticide to kill it. So that's how it starts. And those signs are there. And therefore, but we don't seem to pay attention to that. Even when we still have, in the region, in Rwanda, we're still grappling with issues of denial, issues of, and then again, some of it perpetrated from external sources. But others, for instance, the continued existence of the FDLR and its preservation speaks to that, because yes, these are people who were part of those who carried out the genocide, but who still harbor the ideology. So you have an issue of ideology, you have an issue of political leaders who still think that they can resolve political issues by targeting certain groups based on their either race, religion, but in the context of the Great Lakes region, is a specific group of people that are targeted. And so those are some of the signs that one sees. And once those signs are seen, there should be a deliberate effort to speak about it, to be outspoken about what is happening, and actually to fight it, because what happened in Rwanda can also happen anywhere else.
As we're heading up, we are young, we young generation. We have not witnessed what's happening in Rwanda. We just see in the different articles, documentaries. But currently, there is rising of social media as digital platforms. The key platform to send, to transmit messages, as a lot of articles say it. One among the causative, it's the hated message that have been passed through different communities back then in the Rwanda genocide. Currently, the message is transferred very fast. The message is running very fast, and the digital platform are the one among the platforms that are being used. Young people are the most users of the digital platforms, and different kind of hated message has been transferred to different communities. What are the role of this digital platform, we journalists and media companies, as well as the young people themselves, to ensure that they can protect and guide their community against such kind of hated tragedy escalated to the extent that it can make a cause of tragedy and high causative of the mass killing like happens.
You know, historically, even in Rwanda, at the time, 32 years ago, the media played a very crucial role in spreading genocide propaganda, in spreading hatred, in dividing people, and so that was then. What is happening now is indeed with the advent of social media, you've got digital platforms that are unregulated. You know, anybody can see. At the time, indeed, 32 years ago, it was mostly through radio, through print and radio and TV media. That is how it was mainly spread. To date, you have social media platforms. They can be a tool for good as much as they can be a tool for bad. Part of the reasons why we have to commemorate every year is to remind even those who are not there at the time, those not born during the time, and those who are come, even future generations, that those that will come even after you, that no human being should ever go through what Rwandans went through. 32 years later, we still have people who are scarred by the tragedy of genocide against the Tutsis. We still, as a nation, we are still rebuilding. And therefore, with the advent of social media platforms, they have to be used responsibly. We've seen when they have been misused, what they're able to do. So one of the strategies to combat genocide ideology and spreading of harmful and genocide propaganda is indeed to be part of this global effort and to use the social media, but for good reasons. But also to educate our young people. Even before, the media had a very big role in mobilizing, because again, as I said, media can be used, whatever platforms, digital platforms, print media, all those were used at the time as a tool for mobilization, as a tool for spreading the propaganda and the ideology. And so it can be now. So, but what we would expect of the young people now is to understand the effects. That genocide is real, it's not a joke. It's about targeting people for no other reason but for as genocide is classified. Therefore, we ask our young people to be mindful and to use these digital platforms for good, not for the wrong reasons.
So, about back then, international bodies stay silent, but currently we see different conflicts across Africa arose with a different patterns. And what, as ambassador of the Republic of Rwanda in Tanzania, what's your message to international organizations on site on supervising what happened across the globe and to ensure that the peace is standing in the community as a key?
I mean, we can only urge the rest of the international community and other partners that the international community failed 32 years ago. It cannot afford to fail again. The betrayal that the Rwandan people felt in 1994 should not be the same betrayal that everybody else should face so many years later. Therefore, we work with partners. I'm grateful for the UN family here for always being part of this commemoration and to always be part of this bigger mission of ensuring that preservation of lives is ensured through collaborative efforts. We urge, countries that harbor some of these fugitives to remember that we can only get to where we want, including in terms of development, if those perpetrators are held accountable. So it should not be about actually Rwanda, it should be about humanity. The 1 million human lives that were lost, unfortunately it was in Rwanda, it could be anywhere else. But anybody who values human lives, anybody who values human dignity, they should also think of the consequences of inaction and be mindful and therefore take what we say, what we see here every day we remember, give it the seriousness it deserves.
What is your specific message to everyone who is attending here or whoever is not attending here, but he or she could note that hated messages, hated actions is not allowed in order to preserve the togetherness and unity as we Africans?
First of all, our message has, I thank people who always stand with us in solidarity. Every time we have commemoration since 1994, this is the 32nd. And I want to be grateful for all those who have stood with us in solidarity with the Rwandan people. But at the same time also remind everybody that if you take our example, what messages of hatred can do to the extent that it comes to genocide is something any reasonable human being should desist from. And therefore, we've also seen that it takes a lot of hard work to rebuild. Dealing with a fractured society that has gone through genocide, you're not dealing with a building that has collapsed. No, building, it's concrete and metal, and you put it back, and it's... Here you're talking about human lives. You have women who were raped, you have kids who were orphaned. They're now big, but they still move with those scars. You dealing with a traumatized society. Therefore, that, you know, if that trust is broken between people, rebuilding trust is not like rebuilding a road. This is something that takes generations. Even what we are doing today is still work in progress. Yes, we've achieved a lot, but there's still a lot to be done. And therefore, if 32 years down the road we are still rebuilding, why would anybody want to go through the same route as if that was not bad enough? So there are so many lessons for everybody to see, but all we require is that maybe they open their eyes wider, but also warn them that it's not a good place to be. Once you face it, coming out of it can be a nightmare. For Rwanda, for all intents and purposes, in 1994 we were a failed state. It had to take strong leadership to get to where we are. It had to take extra resilience over people to put aside. You know, what we ask of the survivors is something that is difficult to ask of anybody. You know, living together with somebody who killed your family, who messed up your life, it's not an easy thing. Therefore, you should be mindful that even as you want to trivialize what happened in Rwanda, that same hatred that you propagate could end up in your own backyard. And nobody deserves it. Nobody deserves that. As human beings, we deserve better. We should work for unity. It's through unity that we prosper as a people, as nations. And therefore, again, let me use the opportunity to thank those who are here to commemorate with us, to stand with us, as we remember the victims of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda.